the reason I've won is because of the past 10, 15 failures.
Good point.
Right. And so you have to take that first step, period. You have to just take a step in the right direction. You're going to fall flat on your face, and that's okay. I don't know anybody in my entire life that is successful that has never failed or have never had a big loss. You have to lose. Right. And that's the only way you're going to get better. So in terms of innovation, it's a struggle. You don't want to do it. It's uncomfortable. But if you stay stagnant, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you have to change something. You have to adapt and move and test.
Welcome to the Strategy with Jason podcast. Tune in for everything you need to know to stay in the know regarding the automotive industry. Here's your host, Jason Harris.
Hey, what's going on, Podcast Nation? It is Jason Harris here, and thank you for joining me on another episode of Strategy with Jason. Today, I have an amazing guest. I have the one, the only, the oh-so-famous Colby Joyner with me. Colby, what's up? How you doing, man?
If I was any better, I'd be you.
Better you be me. Yeah, right. Yeah. Hey, man, thanks so much for taking the time to come jam with me, by the way. I am super excited, to get together with you. We're working in very similar areas within the industry. And I think it's cool for us to be able to jump on. We can have conversations about it, kind of the future of innovation, the vision. We're going to get into all kinds of cool topics today. But hey, Colby, for everybody out there that's watching, listening right now, and maybe don't know who you are or how you kind of got started, I love kicking off these podcasts with a little origin story. Because I got to be honest with you, I'm just always fascinated to find out how people fall into the island of misfit toys that I call the automotive industry. So Colby, how did you get into the automotive industry?
It started, I originally started selling cars, ironically, at like 18, 19 years old. I was so bad at it that I got out as quickly as I could because it was just not a good fit for me at the time. I wasn't, mentally mature enough. So I actually left and went and joined the Air Force, the U.S. Air Force. I was an air traffic controller in the Air Force. Got out of that, became a medic in the private sector. Ended up getting hurt. Became a massage therapist after that because I knew the body. And to the point where I loved what I was doing, but I wasn't making any money at all.
Of course.
And, since I was a kid, my parents always kind of joked with, hey, you should go be a lawyer, just like most parents would say. Like, they didn't say doctor because I didn't have the intelligence for that, but they said, go be a lawyer because you know how to talk. And so, obviously with massage therapy, you don't talk. You're pretty much quiet the entire time. So I told my wife, I was like, man, I got to figure out a way to make more money. And I was like, I'm gonna go sell cars. And she's like, well, you're probably going to be good at it because you can talk to anybody. So that's pretty much what happened. About 8 years later, here I sit at the epitome of podcasts for automotive.
The epitome of podcast. You're too kind. Thanks, Colby. I appreciate it. Hey, you know what though? But look, nobody comes into the industry just wake up one day, I'm going to get into the business, right? Like we either stumble our way into it, like yourself, or we're born into it. That happens, right? We know those that happen, and then sometimes we get conned into it, and that was kind of my story. I got conned into it, but regardless of how you get into the industry, this is an amazing industry. It's one of those industries that get in your blood. It gets under your skin. Like you can't get it out. Like once
you can't leave.
I've been watching The Godfather recently. I don't know why, but it's one of those, just like it just brings you into the family. And then once you're in the family, you're just in it. You never go anywhere. Or Michael's gonna, out you or whatever it is. Anyways, Chris, I've been watching a lot of Godfather lately. I don't know why, but hey, man, we got some cool topics. I'd love to kind of get into these, and the first thing let's just talk about just kind of overall vision, right? Because like I said, we work in some very similar vertical, and when it comes to automation, it comes to machine learning, it comes to AI, less than 5% of the dealer body out there is actively using any one of those pieces of technology on a regular basis. And I'd love to just kind of find out, what is your vision, for the industry and the way that we're kind of evolving through technology?
I mean, it may not be the most PC thing to say, but, automotive traditionally has been relatively behind the curve on technology.
Sure.
And so you have a lot of people nowadays that are coming from outside automotive to bring software or solutions to automotive. Other companies that have, a good baseline that now want to jump into this space because even their technology that may not be top tier in their industry is incredibly top tier in automotive just because we're behind.
Yes.
So if we look at automotive compared to other industries are going in that automation, artificial intelligence, machine learning, being able to utilize a lot of technology to enhance the customer experience, enhance the customer communication, follow-up, sales, regardless. So for me, I see automotive in the future, like it's not going to be so far off the correction that happened with Carvana and Vroom.
Yes.
Right. I think it's going to be a gradual onset of technology pieces that are going to communicate very well together. Hopefully we're going to get rid of a lot of this closed API, right, where 100%. It's a lot more communication across the board. And I still see the actual dealership of, you go to the store, you shop with the car, you have a salesperson or something similar, and you do the whole process as normal. But I think as we move forward, a lot of the issues or the areas that we take a long time, whether it's in finance or the initial communication or the fact finding, all of this stuff is going to be a lot more automated, but still with humans, right? 100%. I don't think AI is going to replace. But I love the fact you bring that.
Yes, thank you. We're not going into the robot apocalypse. No,
not at all. Not at all. And if so, I'm glad I'm glad it's going to happen after I've retired. So at least I'm good for the next 20 years, right?
But I mean, look, there's so much truth to that, right? Like, I think people think of any one of those three pieces of technology, and I think they think of like McDonald's, and they're like, we're going to get rid of all the people at the counter, because we're going to put these kiosks and this technology is going to just do the whole thing for them. Well, you know what? Maybe for a 99-cent burger, that might be the case. Mm-hmm. Right. But this isn't a 99-cent burger. This is a $30, $40, $50, $60, $70,000 purchase. It's probably the second largest purchase that majority of anybody out there will ever make. Right. And there has to be a human element to it. When we think of automation or machine learning or AI, it is literally just to enhance the human's efforts. Mm-hmm. All right. And I think if anything, like I look at it like this is me putting my dealer principal hat on. Right. And I get the vision, man, because I think we're so in line on this. Right. Is me putting my dealer principal hat on is like I see, when we are busy, I think about like a Saturday, everyone's running around, going crazy and stuff like that. Right. If there's a way I can either automate or I can create time back, I can carve more time back through automating some of those processes, then I'm 100% down for it. Right. Because I'm going to give time back to them where they can actually execute and bring a better experience. But I think for a lot of dealerships out there, there's fear in that. There's fear in innovation, and which is perfect because that's kind of our next topic, right? Like there's this sense of like, let me just kind of keep doing what I'm doing, all right? Because that's comfortable. I'm comfortable. Like innovation is not a comfortable place to be, but I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
Well, I mean, think about it this way. We have growing pains when we grow up, right? Your bones hurt. You're sore, especially when you're going through, the puberty stage and you're kind of you're becoming who you're supposed to be physically. It hurts. It doesn't feel good. It's painful. Or if you go and go to the gym, which, I need to do a lot more, but if you go to the gym, it hurts to work out. It's not, there's some people that are, albeit probably a little crazy that love going to the gym. I'm not one of those guys, but your muscles hurt, you feel the burn. It's a change that happens. You can't have the change without the struggle at all.
You can't have the change without the struggle.
Yeah.
I like that. I think that might be the topic of this podcast, by the way. Doesn't that sound good? You can't have the change without the struggle. But you're right, though. But I think a lot of times when people think of innovation, I think the one reason it's scary is because they don't know where to start. So let's kind of start with that.
You have to just start.
You just have to hit the button and go.
You have to look because I have failed way more than I've ever won.
Oh, yes.
But the reason I've won is because of the past 10, 15 failures.
Good point.
Right. And so you have to take that first step, period. You have to just take a step in the right direction. You're going to fall flat on your face, and that's okay. I don't know anybody in my entire life that is successful that has never failed or have never had a big loss. You have to lose. Right. And that's the only way you're going to get better. So in terms of innovation, it's a struggle. You don't want to do it. It's uncomfortable. But if you stay stagnant, if nothing changes, nothing changes. So you have to change something. You have to adapt and move and test, A/B test stuff like even internally in a dealership. If you have a sales process, right? If you have a your internet follow-up process, whatever, change it.
Yes.
Like if you've had it for 10 years, change it. What's the worst that's going to happen? You're going to start losing a couple sales. Okay, great. Guess what? You can change it back.
Well, you know what, though? When I think about it, I have seen this happen. I'm curious if you've seen this happen. I've seen dealers innovate just for the sake of innovating. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm going to go buy into this widget or this platform or this software or whatever it is, right? Because everybody else is doing it. Let's say like DR could be a perfect example of that. Digital retailing. There were a lot of people, I think, there were early adopters that people saw it because that innovation, I think, probably matched what their company's goal and culture was, right? So it made sense for them to move that towards that direction of innovation. And then there was a lot that just kind of jumped on it for the sake of doing that. I actually get scared around that. I actually don't want dealers to innovate for the sake of innovating because it never sticks. It doesn't work. It doesn't get into the process, right? I think dealers need to spend more time, kind of figuring out, what is their brand about? Is innovation even a part of their brand? Because there are companies out there that have never innovated, and that has actually become a part of their brand. Like, we're actually old school, like we're not going to do it this way. We're not going to send this out. We're going to write you a letter. I don't know why that'd be cool or not, but you know what I mean though. So it's like I think it's not necessarily is what we do. Like, everybody knows what we do. We sell and service metal. Right? Everybody knows how we do it. That's pretty general. But why we do it the way we do it, I think gives direction, to the way we innovate our dealerships. But I think it's first defining those goals. Have you not seen the exact same thing?
Oh, 100%. And I think with any kind of innovation, like, you have to be relatively calculated with what you're doing. Yes. But there's something that I've been saying a lot. And I wasn't the one that made up the phrase at all, but if the technology or the innovation doesn't match the culture in the store, it's not going to work. Right. And so you can be innovative, but if it doesn't match what and your core, then it's not going to work because nobody's going to buy into it. You're not going to want to adopt that in the process. And really, if you change the process, or if you change if the innovation is going to change your culture, who knows if it's going to be for better or for worse. So really, dealers in general need to focus on getting innovative items or structure or processes or software or any piece that matches them. Because you got to culture is such a hard thing to build, and it takes a very long time to build. And you can demolish that in an instant with the software piece. You can demolish that in an instant with the process.
You know what? I'm 100% with you on that. I'm just kind of like thinking to myself, like, and I love the fact that we're heading down this direction, right? I love finding rabbit holes, and then I'll go for them. Right?
Oh, I call it riding the dopamine.
Yeah, right. We're just gonna keep going that way. But so there's one side of me, like, I was thinking, like, the first dealership I worked with, right? And this is the one side of me thinking that it's okay to just not necessarily have to innovate, but just kind of embrace that culture. And so one side of me is like, yes, because the first dealership I worked with had a culture around making money. That was it. Mm-hmm. The whole culture was around making money, right? And not necessarily, I would say, by social standards, a great culture, but it was a very, very clearly defined culture. And everybody was there for one purpose and one purpose only, and that was to make money, right? And then there's, so do they need to innovate? In a sense, they probably don't, because their culture doesn't necessarily define that they need to innovate. But then there's the other side of me. So that's one side of my brain. And then the other side of my brain says, no, dum-dum. Your customer demands that you innovate. So at what point in time, and I was curious to think, do you think we're at that breaking point now? Do you think we're at that breaking point where it's like we can still operate with kind of an older, let's say, non-innovative culture, which can still work because I've seen it on P&Ls. It still works, right? Mm-hmm. Or have we hit that point where it's like, no, you're going to have to let that go, and you're going to have to kind of embrace the suck, all right? Because you're going to need to innovate because your customer demands that you innovate. Do you think we've hit that? I associate
it with the difference between Apple and Android.
All right. I see where you go.
Okay. With this. So with Android, you buy a brand new Samsung S22 Ultra Plus Pro, right? And you get the most updated new features, technology, all this other stuff, but it doesn't always exactly work perfectly. Not yet, right? It's there, but it's not there yet. So you get sales off of it, you get revenue off of it, you get brand loyalty off of it because people like that innovative side of Google or Android. But then you have Apple, which I'm an Apple guy. MacBook, iPhones, iPads, iWatch, everything, right? And it's because I know that the products that are in Apple, they work. It may take them 3 years from the point that Samsung or Google introduced it, but I know that when Apple does it, it works pretty flawlessly, right? And so I think it's not so divided. It's not so you either need to go all in or you kind of need to stay. I think you need to take incremental steps to adjust. And with the public, I don't think that the public is sitting there demanding that we change, because if we change too quickly, then they're having to kind of figure out like, okay, how do I do this? Because I would say that if you're over the age of 25 or 30, you pretty much know how to buy a car. Like, sure. I'm going to go to cars.com or Car Gurus or TrueCar. I'm going to go somewhere to go look. I'm going to go to the dealer website. I'm going to inquire about something. I'm going to go in there, and it's all relatively not basic knowledge that they know how to buy a car. But if we flip the script on that process, if we say, now you got to buy it all online, or now you got to do this, now you got to do this, they may have been wanting something cool and technology forward and innovative, but now they don't know how to do it. And then at that point, how do they trust it? So they may not like, CSI surveys or CSI and all that stuff may not be the best across the industry, but at the same time, there are very, very good dealers out there that are, handle their customers appropriately. Sorry. That's all right. Jared Kilway calling me. Dummy. So let me rephrase. So you have innovative technology that's being placed into stores where the customer doesn't know how to adjust and handle that. So then they don't necessarily trust it per se. And it's so new that it breaks. 100%. And so that breaking point makes them trust it less.
Which is the same reason why I think, dealers are kind of struggling to adopt, machine learning, AI, or even automation, because it doesn't go right every single time, it's going to break sometimes, and there's this there's this fear that goes along with that. But I think, what I'm kind of hearing, what you're saying is that, look, everything kind of comes like we innovate for the sake of bettering our process and our people. I think when it comes down to it, at the end of the day, that's why we're going to innovate. I'm just going to think, like, do we innovate for the culture? No, not necessarily. Do we innovate for the person, for the customer? There's some element, yes, there's a splash of that in there. But really, really, I think as an owner, we innovate because we want to better our process, all right, and we innovate for our people. We want to, not necessarily, make their job easier, even though that is definitely an element of it, all right, but we just make them better.
I think we innovate. I think we innovate to attract multi-generational talent.
Well, that's right? A good point too, right? And you mentioned you started to go kind of down a little bit of this path, right? When we're talking about kind of like, process, right, and lead management. So that's what I was kind of hearing. So I think it's a good segue actually into our next topic, right? When it comes to lead management, because if there's one place that I think it doesn't matter what type of dealership you are, where you're located in the world, all right, if there's literally one process that you could possibly innovate and really spend time innovating, it is the way that we manage leads. And probably the first problem is that we actually call them leads.
Leads.
Like
opportunities.
Exactly, right? Like I was an early dealer.com user, and I remember there was never a report that was called a lead report. It was a inquiry, or it might have been a form fill. It was like, here's how many forms got filled on your site, and here's how many people inquired, right? But it was never called a lead. It was just like, hey, someone's got a question, you need to go and answer it, right? But let's talk a little bit about lead management, the future. Let's talk about where you think it sits right now, and what do you think the future of lead management is?
I think there's so many different channels that a customer is willing to communicate on nowadays.
Yes.
And I think that's the difference with all of this technology coming out is you could talk to 80-90% of the stores and say, what's your process? Phone call, text, email, video, right? And it goes out there as a normal, this is how we send it. There's automated emails, there's automated text messages, there's automated videos that go out, but we're not looking at all the different channels that a customer is willing to communicate on. I mean, even, the previous auto group that I was with, we utilized DriveCentric, and DriveCentric has the rooms that you can set up a Zoom or a room within DriveCentric to have that walk around video, to have that different style of communication without the customer having to come into the store. I think lead management in general is going to be far more omni-channel and adaptive to any type of communication. So the customer may inquire or may want to communicate through WhatsApp or Facebook Messenger 100%. Or Snapchat or Instagram or normal text message or FaceTime or Zoom or any different way of communication. They're going to want to do that. And so I think lead management in the future goes towards more of a lot more broad approach, where it's going to be, at first, it will be more difficult for the salesperson, because now their 4 items that they have to do when a lead comes in is going to turn into 10, right? They're going to have to go and check, is this person on WhatsApp? Is it on this? Is it on this? Because like I said, kind of in the beginning, unfortunately, automotive is a little behind in technology. So we're not going to have all those integrations to be able to just populate all this data.
No.
And so it's going to be more taxing for the sales rep or BDC agent or internet manager to go in there and try to figure out what channel the customer is wanting to communicate on, which goes into the whole marketing. Like, where are you going to market now to try to attract customers that are going to be wanting to communicate in a different way? So lead management in the future is going to go far more into more of a broad omni-channel engagement. And that's really why I believe that automation, AI, machine learning, and not to, prop myself up or you up or anybody else that's in the space up.
You can prop us all
on
up.
Purpose.
Let's do it.
But I'm saying not that I'm saying that on purpose, and not just because it's what I do now, but that's going to be so crucial for dealerships to ensure that the customer's happy because they get the engagement, they get the follow-up, they get the questions answered at the appropriate time. It's going to be so crucial for companies like ours to jump in there and help that dealership maintain engagement. One of the things that I know we struggle with right now, dealerships in general, I mean, I just left a dealership prior to this move 2 months ago, right?
Yes.
One of the things that we struggle with is the humans, or us humans, having the mindset of pre-qualification, right? Whether it's the source, whether it's the name of the customer, whether it's the type of vehicle that they're on, whether it's the soft pull credit score that comes in on the lead, whatever it is, we pre-qualify. And so that's a good thing about automation or AI or machine learning or any of this stuff.
Because it doesn't do it, right? Like,
it doesn't do it. You can task it to do something.
Mean it doesn't cherry pick? What?
It doesn't cherry pick.
Technology doesn't cherry pick, right?
Yeah, exactly. So at that point, it's every lead deserves equal opportunity.
Yes, there we go. That's the whole point right there, right? And if you're a dealership that cares about that, then that's what you need to get involved in. If you don't, then don't even bother.
If you're a dealership that doesn't care about every lead getting managed appropriately,
well, it's meaningful conversation. So kind of going back to what you were talking about, because I love the fact that we're going down this rabbit hole, right? Because I hate the word lead. I absolutely hate it. It's funny, when I was a dealer principal, this was 2013, 2014, 2015, right? Even then, I didn't care about how many leads, and maybe that was just because I'm weird and I don't think that way. I wanted to know how many conversations. I wanted to know not how many leads. And so I feel like as an industry, which I love, and I'm so excited as an industry, we're moving on beyond this, right? We're moving past this decade or the era of leads, right? Because I feel like the last 10 years, that's all of our conversations been around. How to get leads, how to get more leads. Here's the widget. Here's another widget. Here's a marketing strategy. Here's this, right? And the whole goal was just to generate leads. All right. But that was great. But we exponentially generated so many leads, we totally forgot that there actually had to be a substantial amount of process and technology that goes around the actual engagement of these. And so now I think the true measurement anymore is now meaningful conversations, not leads. When I ask a dealership and I know that they're a great operator, they can actually tell me, well, it's not, hey, Jay, how many leads you have? It's how many meaningful conversations did you have last month? Well, I tell you, we had right around 217 meaningful conversations. Wow. All right, out of those meaningful conversations, what were the results on that? Well, let me tell you, we generated these many appointments, we generated these many sales, we generated this much
you blow the
revenue.
benchmarks, you blow the traditional benchmarks out of the water.
100%. 100%. That's what we need to do.
You blow them out.
Well, look, we've talked about this kind of before, right? Like standardization. We've had this conversation, I think, many, many times where everyone's had this many conversations. Like, what are we measuring? And are we measuring that something's important, right? I think in the past, right, we've been measuring what the agencies want us to measure. Let's measure CPCs, CTRs, CPMs, every 3-letter bloody acronym we can come up with. Let's measure that because that sounds great.
You sold this many vehicles because it was on page 4 of the SRP, but the customer viewed page 1, but we're going to attribute to that.
Yes, 100%. I think what we're getting into this amazing time in lead management where we stop measuring leads and we just start measuring, what the meaningful conversations are, which is great from a dealership's process perspective, right? But I think with dealerships out there, when they look at this, it's like, look, that means you really need to process the crap out of your engagement strategy. The one thing the one thing I love about digital retailing, right, is that it brought, or I think what it did is it put the final nail in the coffin to the sales process. All right. It brought enough awareness to the industry that, customers don't want a sales process. They want a buying process. Like I love Best Buy, right? I got 3 ways. I can buy anything I want from Best Buy in 3 different ways, right? I can reserve it, go into the deal. I can go into the into Best Buy, touch it, smell it, sniff it, then pay for it, right? I can completely buy it online and get it shipped to my house, right? Or I can buy it and just pick it up at a location because I need it right away. But that's a buying process, not a sales process. Now I think what we've done as far as innovating that portion, now we need to go and innovate our in communication and engagement process. And I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that.
So there's I'm sure you know this guy, Carlo Castillo.
Oh yeah, Carlo.
Okay. So Carlo Castillo, he was a relatively saving grace because, like I said, I used DriveCentric prior, and I was getting tired of the just traditional workflow and process and follow up.
Yes.
Especially when it's like, hey, yeah, we're going to be very, very hard on for, you got to answer the lead quickly. You got to say these certain things in the very beginning. You got to do all these tasks, but then everything is task based. I think we need to just take that whole task based mentality and chunk it, other than the initial follow up.
Because nobody has a conversation like that. No one goes into a conversation. Here's a 6 task I need to check off.
Nope. And the interesting things like what Carlo does over there at the Lexus store in Florida is everything's based off of engagement, right? So he focuses on a certain day range, and he's going to engage with that lead or attempt engagement with that lead as often as he can, just like it's a day 1 lead every day for, let's say, the first 2 weeks. Then it goes off into, a normal kind of, hey, I'm going to go touch it and see what's going on with it and kind of check in with them. If the lead happens to, or let me rephrase, if the opportunity happens to re-engage at, let's say, day 48, a traditional workflow, you have a task maybe on day 45 and day 60. And they're not necessarily the same thing. And one may be a phone call, one may be an email that's automated. Yes. So the leading or the opportunity engages at day 48. Well, there's nothing set to remind the salesperson or BDC agent or anybody to re-engage with that person the following day if you did not get an appointment or any kind of solidified movement down the funnel. But the way that Carlo works is at that point, once the lead or the opportunity engages, then it's going to jump back into his normal 14-day, hey, I'm going to go and jump in and hit that opportunity just like it's a day 1. So if you, I kind of joke, my dad always would tell me, like, do you want to T-chart it? Right. Because we would argue about something, like who did best at this or who did best at this. And he's like, let's T-chart it and, tally on either side and who won. And so if you T-chart it and you compare a traditional workflow with an engagement workflow that's not task-based, I guarantee you that you're going to have better results with your opportunities.
Oh, well, because it's a solid process, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think too often we look at technology to define the process. When I think what you just kind of described there was an amazing example of the dealership defining the process and then working backwards towards the technology to actually help execute on that process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what we're talking about. I mean, I think a lot of people look at AI, they look at automation, they look at machine learning, and they see like it replacing process, but actually no, they are just forms, a way of executing a clearly more defined process that you need to define. Like, it's just engagement, absolutely 100% is going to be the key for any dealership success out there. And there are amazing operators out there that know that. And Carlos is a perfect example of that, right? And there are many others that are like that. And they should look at those dealers and say, look what they focused on. Look what became a core part of their brand. They're like, look, it's not going to be acceptable that we're going to engage this way. We're going to engage this way. You know, one of my first jobs was working for Radio Shack. And, you know, I'm dating myself, right?
Nice.
It's like, but back then it meant something to work at a Radio Shack. You know, it's like you had questions, we had answers. It was a company-wide commitment for every single employee to be able to have this answer. You know, no difference to, it's like now it becomes a company-wide commitment to engage this way. All right, anything less than that's going to be completely unacceptable. You know, it's like define that process, work back towards the technology, which is really, I think, the future of automotive. And I think almost everything we've talked about up to this point is really kind of leading into our last topic today, which is the future of automotive. You know, and then we've kind of touched on it a little bit through our entire conversation. But I'm just kind of interested in getting your kind of just general thoughts. Where do you think, let's say, the future of future of automotive is going? And you can touch on any particular part of it. I don't particularly care. Just process, people, technology. Where do you think the future is going to be?
Well, I'll go down that road in a second, but one of the things that you were talking about, so I don't think automation is specific to human nature.
All right.
Human nature is not, or automation is not a particular part of a human, right? Humans are emotional, conversational, and, you know, they get feelings and they have all this other stuff. And automation is all designed around processes. So you can automate processes, but you have to be able to allow freedom of conversation. And 100%. So I think the future of automotive, a lot of the sales process, a lot of the buying process is going to be automated. But where it actually, I think, makes automotive a lot better moving forward is that now the people that are involved in the entire transaction and purchase are only going to be focused on the relationship.
Yes.
Versus, oh my gosh, I need to check off this specific thing in the process. So I think there's going to be a lot more automation of processes and a lot more examples of communication and relationship building moving forward, because that's how the mom and pop dealerships, the one-off single point stores, the auto groups, that's how they're going to retain their dealer franchise. If it happens to go to more of a, one-stop shop with an OEM, they're going to build the local relationships with those people. And that's why people are going to go into the stores. They can go online, they can pick the car, do all this other stuff, but then they're going to go in there and say, hey, Johnny, how you doing? It's been 3 years since I've seen you, and how the kids, there's a relationship that's being built there. So, and I think we've been bringing too many people into the industry that have that really good relationship building ability, and trying to change them into being a rule and process follower.
100%.
So that's where I think we go. I think we go to and I don't say automation in terms of replacing jobs or replacing people. It's making them more proficient, efficient, effective, higher conversions. You know, everything is going to go up. The metrics and the benchmarks are all going to be blown out of the water. We're going to have to retouch everything and say, hey, what is the new standards? Because we're in 5 years, when you look back at the standards of today, you're going to hopefully be shocked that they were that low.
I'm so with you. I mean, I think for me, is a lot of it's just new strategies. You know, we've had so many strategies, you know, for many, many years around acquisition, right? Mm-hmm. We've had many strategies about retention, you know, and now we're going to have strategies around automation, strategies around machine learning. All right. You know, what can I learn from the data that I'm able to collect, you know, from my DMS or my CRM or from my customers? I mean, we've said this many, many times. I feel like we're getting into the, you know, we said that, you know, dealerships are sitting on a gold mine of data, but we don't necessarily, they understand exactly what that is. And I think, but I think though we're entering into the new decade of, let's call it data conscious dealers, all right, where they're like, oh no, No, I can do that. And if I understand that, that means I can create this. And that means if anytime this happens, I can make this happen. I'm like, that's awesome, right? And I think, definitely from an AI perspective, it's huge. There's huge AI opportunities out there, from language, identifying, language patterns and how well we're executing on the words that we want to be executing. There's just so much opportunities. But there's now new strategies. It's not just acquisition and retention strategies. Now you have engagement strategies. You have AI strategies, you have automation strategy. Look, I'm excited. I'm excited because, I've been talking about strategy for many years, and I feel like as an industry, this is becoming the time and the era that we're becoming insanely more strategic with every single opportunity. Not lead, I said opportunity.
I know. So you've had more practice on that. I came from a dealership to where it was just lead. Where's your lead report? Where's your lead report?
Exactly.
So, yeah,
exactly.
I'll get better. I promise.
It's all right, Colby. Hey, look, I know we're towards the tail end of our time today, and we could probably easily jam a whole another half an hour easy on these topics. But for everybody out there watching and listening right now, who would maybe like to connect with you, learn a little bit more about what you do, or even follow along with your journey, what's the best way to do so?
Honestly, any social platform. My Facebook, Colby Joyner on Facebook, LinkedIn. I have a Twitter. Don't really use it very much, but really the best way to engage with me and communicate with me is either LinkedIn or Facebook.
That's awesome. Hey, Colby, thank you, man, for taking the time to jam with me today. This has been a lot of fun. You have yourself an amazing day.
Yeah, you too, man. I appreciate it.
Thanks for tuning in to the Strategy with Jason podcast with your host, Jason Harris. Don't want to miss new content? Be sure to check out the full podcast library at strategywithjason.com to stay in the know. Remember to like, comment, and subscribe. Happy podcasting.